All right, welcome to class, everybody. Settle in, settle in. So I want you to imagine for just a second that you've built the single biggest sports brand on the face of the earth, okay? Only to watch your most persistent, annoying rivals suddenly completely steal the spotlight and just totally rewrite the rules of the game. Well, today's explainer is an absolutely fascinating business case study. We're looking at the legendary rivalry between Nike and Adidas. But look, we are not just talking about a shoe war here. We're going to look at this as a total masterclass in shifting competitive landscapes, corporate strategy, and how you actually create cultural capital. Okay, let's just dive right into this.
Let's do a really quick review of today's syllabus. We're breaking this down into 5 parts. First, the era of athletic performance. Second, the athlete as a brand. Third, pivoting to cultural capital. Fourth, the danger of concentration risk. And finally, part 5, winning the modern market.
All right, kicking things off with Section 1, the era of athletic performance. This takes us way back to a time when sneakers were strictly considered sports tools, and you won your market share out there on the field.
To really get this rivalry, we've got to establish our historical baseline here. Long before Nike became the massive giant we know today, Adidas was absolutely the undisputed king. Founded in Germany by Adolf Dassler in 1949, they totally dominated global sports. I mean, if you were an Olympic athlete, a football legend, a World Cup champ, you were Adidas. For decades, those 3 stripes were literally the symbol for pure victory and massive manufacturing scale. Then, flash forward to the 1970s, and this scrappy little American company shows up, Nike. Founded by Phil Knight and Bill Bowerman, Nike literally started out by selling running shoes from the trunks of their cars at local track meets. Honestly, nobody expected them to survive against a titan like Adidas. But Nike understood this one vital thing super early on. Winning athletes create winning brands. Instead of trying to compete purely on manufacturing scale, which, let's be real, they just couldn't do, Nike invested heavily in athlete endorsements. And by the time we hit 1984, that strategy set the stage for a decision that would change sports marketing forever.
Which brings us to Section 2, the athlete as a brand. Let's dive right into this major paradigm shift initiated by Nike in the 1980s that totally disrupted the entire market.
So I want you to think about this rhetorical question. When your competitor has way better manufacturing, how do you actually win? Back in 1984, Nike was actually really struggling in the basketball market. Converse absolutely dominated the NBA, and Adidas was still incredibly powerful all over the world. So Nike is facing this massive market deficit, right? They couldn't outproduce Adidas, so they had to figure out how to outthink them.
And here is exactly how they did it. Step 1. They made what is arguably one of the greatest business decisions in history. They signed this rookie you might have heard of named Michael Jordan. Now, fun fact here, Jordan actually wanted to sign with Adidas at the time, but Nike offered him something totally revolutionary. Step 2. They promised to build an entirely new brand around just him, one single athlete. The result, of course, was the Air Jordan 1. But step 3 is where the real market disruption happens. The NBA actually hated the shoe's colors, essentially banning it from being worn on the court unless he paid a penalty. But instead of backing down, Nike literally weaponized the controversy. They gladly paid those fines and turned the whole thing into an advertising campaign. Every single fine became a commercial. They sent this loud, rebellious message straight to the consumer. The league cannot stop greatness. The public completely ate it up, and sales absolutely exploded.
The absolute most crucial realization of this era was so simple, yet so profound. Athletes weren't just endorsers anymore. They were brands themselves. Nike hit on a completely new business formula here. Within just a few years, Air Jordan generated hundreds of millions of dollars. It wasn't just about the shoes anymore. This one single realization transformed Nike from just a regular sports company into an absolute cultural powerhouse. Competitors would literally spend the next few decades trying to recreate that exact same magic.
Moving right along to Section 3, pivoting to cultural capital. As we push into the 1990s and 2000s, we see the strategic battlefield completely shift away from pure athletics.
Let's compare the 2 distinct corporate strategies that started emerging here. Throughout the 90s and early 2000s, Nike aggressively doubled down on that athlete as a brand strategy. They started signing superstars across every major sport. Tiger Woods in golf, LeBron James in basketball, Cristiano Ronaldo in football. Nike was basically selling ambition, achievement, and success. The swoosh became this global symbol of excellence, and it really seemed like the sneaker crown was permanently secured by Nike. Adidas, on the other hand, was seriously struggling to keep pace, especially in North America. But then, right around the mid-2010s, Adidas executes this completely brilliant blue ocean pivot.
Instead of trying to fight Nike on the athletic field, where, Nike was already crushing it, Adidas looked toward a totally new emerging battlefield: entertainment, music, fashion, and street culture. They decided to start partnering with artists, musicians, and designers instead of just athletes.
And this brings us to what is arguably the most key strategic asset in modern business: cultural relevance. It's that exact point where our perfectly functional product stops being just a utility and transforms into a status symbol, an identity marker, a literal piece of pop culture. Adidas basically struck gold by signing rapper and entrepreneur Kanye West. That collaboration produced the Yeezy Boost 350, and guys, the impact was immediate and totally staggering. Sneaker stores sold out instantly, resale prices went absolutely through the roof, and social media just exploded. For the first time in years, younger consumers viewed Adidas as the coolest sneaker brand on the market. The entire conversation has shifted. Consumers weren't asking which shoe performed better in a pickup basketball game anymore. They were asking which sneaker looked better on Instagram.
Now, Nike, being the incredibly smart powerhouse they are, understood this lesson super fast and adopted to this new reality. Very soon, both companies were aggressively expanding their collaborations with high-end designers and luxury brands. They intentionally started creating limited releases, basically turning a mere product drop into a massive cultural event that generated online waiting queues stretching for hours. And why? Because simply owning a pair of exclusive sneakers had become an incredibly powerful status symbol. Consumers were no longer just buying shoes to protect their feet. They were buying stories. They were buying into communities. They were buying an identity. Culture itself had literally become the primary product.
Okay, moving to Section 4, the danger of concentration risk. Let's shift our focus to a super critical business lesson regarding risk management that followed this huge cultural sneaker boom.
Take a look at this risk model comparison. By the late 2010s, Adidas had obviously created an incredible cultural movement with Yeezy, but at the same time, they'd created a massive strategic vulnerability. They became almost entirely over-reliant on one single, highly volatile cultural partnership. Their cultural relevance was tied heavily to just one unpredictable personality. Contrast that with Nike's model. Even as Nike engaged in all these crazy cultural drops and luxury collaborations, they carefully maintained a highly diversified portfolio. They had their hands in multiple sports, dozens of top-tier athletes, and incredibly varied product lines. They definitely didn't put all their cultural eggs in one single basket.
And the ultimate fallout proved exactly why that kind of diversification matters so much. As many of you probably know, a string of controversies surrounding Kanye West led Adidas to abruptly terminate that partnership. One of the single most successful collaborations in the history of sneakers literally just stopped, overnight. The aftermath for Adidas was really severe. Enormous financial challenges, massive piles of unsold inventory, and a really significant drop in revenue. The objective takeaway here for any business strategy is crystal clear. Building culture is an unbelievably powerful tool for market capture. But relying entirely on one personality to maintain that culture, well, that carries a massive, sometimes even existential, concentration risk.
Finally, Section 5, winning the modern market. Let's wrap this up by summarizing the macro takeaways of the modern consumer economy based on everything we've looked at in today's explainer.
To really understand who holds the power today, all you have to do is look at this metric: billions of dollars. That is the sheer scale of the Jordan brand's annual revenue today, literally decades after Michael Jordan retired from playing basketball. Nike still heavily dominates global athletic footwear revenue. And honestly, this just proves the incredible longevity and compounding value of Nike's original 1980 strategy of turning an athlete into an enduring standalone brand.
But at the end of the day, both of these companies changed marketing forever. Pay really close attention to this because it's the ultimate business lesson. Factories can be copied, technology can be copied, manufacturing, supply chains, all of that can be copied by a competitor. Culture cannot. The biggest lesson from the Nike versus Adidas rivalry actually isn't about shoes at all. It is about attention. The companies that successfully shape public conversations are the ones that ultimately shape the markets. In our modern consumer economy, attention and cultural relevance are the ultimate, totally uncopyable competitive moats.
Which leaves us with this final, incredibly provocative question: who really won the war? Well, the answer depends entirely on how you choose to measure victory. Nike proved the enduring financial power of athlete branding, while Adidas proved the absolute disruptive power of cultural influence. Together, they permanently transformed what used to be a simple piece of sports equipment into a massive global battle for owning culture. And that is a war that they're both still fighting today. I really hope you enjoyed this case study. Thanks for joining me for this explainer. I hope it gave you some great insights into billion-dollar corporate battles and the hidden strategies that change entire industries. Keep learning, class dismissed, and I'll catch you in the next one.